Let's take one step back from talking about money in politics and just define the players and the system. It would be helpful to set the context so that everyone can follow. Can you paint a picture for me for the American political spectrum? Most people believe there are just two segments, the left and the right, but you've made the case in your book, Justice is Coming, as well, that there are factions between these segments as well. So what are the different groups that exist on the political spectrum?
So I think that both the left and the right have three different groups. So one is the establishment. That's the largest group. That's the standard politicians we're all used to: Sinema, Manchin, Biden, et cetera, Mitch McConnell. Then there's the economic populists, and so that's a really interesting group, and I think that is the correct group. That's the group I'm in, and so we talk more about that. And then there are the culture warriors on both sides that mainly do identity politics. So if you're unfamiliar with identity politics in America, it usually starts with the Republicans, actually. They usually try to find some identity that the American people don't like, and then they press on that wound. So they started with the Southern strategy, and so, the Democrats were for civil rights. We're against civil rights. So if you want to discriminate against black people, vote for Republicans. And if you're a Republican and you're catching feelings over that, sorry, but that's a fact. In fact, 2 RNC chairs have apologized for the Southern strategy, which lasted about 40, 50 years, right? So the Republican Party made a decision to be racist, literally. So that was after the Democratic Party, that used to be more racist, passed the Civil Rights Bill because of Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ. And so then the parties flipped, right? So now then the Republicans went to, okay, hating black people stopped working electorally, which is good news. So then they moved to hating gay people. And they did all these ballot initiatives against gay marriage back in 2004 when George Bush was running for re-election. Okay, and then that ran its course, and then people didn't want to hate gay people anymore. So they went after trans people. And then they keep going and going until they find a new target. And then our side usually falls for the trap. Okay, so now normally we fight back on issues that matter a lot: constitutional rights, civil rights, et cetera. So we're not going to let anybody get trampled over by the right wing, okay? But the right wing keeps digging and digging and digging until they find something absurd and unpopular. So recently, in this case, it was trans women playing sports with biological women in the different levels, okay? That's not the first thing they tried. First, they just tried hating trans people overall and taking away their rights. That didn't work. Then they tried going after trans people going in the wrong bathrooms, or quote unquote wrong. That didn't work. Trans in the military, that didn't work. So, but our radicals on our side love to fall for Republican traps. So they're like, oh, you'd like to fight on the issue of sports, where only 18% of Americans are on our side and 79% are on your side. Great, I will happily fall into your trap. Okay, and I would say to them, hey guys, if you think you're protecting the trans community, you're not. You're being counterproductive. You're spending so much time and marketing and optics and all of these things on our least popular position. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a backlash, and you're actually going to walk transgender rights backwards. And that's exactly what happened, right? But for radicals, you can't talk sense into them. Because what defines a radical? Not where you are on the political spectrum, right? You could be far left, far right, but not necessarily be a radical. And these days, some of the former Democratic moderates have become radicals. So radical is a mindset. So number one, you have to have purity. For the right wing, it's usually racial or religious purity, but also ideological purity. And in first Trump administration, no one was allowed to disagree with Trump. You must be pure, right? Now on the left, we have the same exact thing, purity. If you disagree on any issue, even a microscopic one, that's it. You're out. You're a Nazi. You're a right-winger. You're a heretic. Bring out the pitchforks. So purity, no dissent is allowed. You must agree with the tribe. If you don't agree with the tribe, then you're going to be driven out of the tribe. And that's why they lost the popular vote, because they drove so many people out of our tribe that we didn't have enough votes to win the election, right? And then lastly, you must hate the other side. And so I don't play that game. And so since I said, no, that doesn't make sense. That's not good for transgender people. That's not good for Democrats, the left wing. It's not good for the country. None of it is good. And they said heretic, fascist, Trump supporter, right? And they grabbed the pitchforks. And that's another thing I knew was going to happen. And did that hurt us? Yeah, it hurt us. But am I going to sit there and agree with a bunch of knuckleheads who are like, yeah, let's do really unpopular things and destroy the movement and never win again? No, I don't care if you're going to make more money or you're going to get more status or clout or whatever you're going to get. I'm never going to agree to irrational things that make no sense at all. So, okay, so that's the culture warriors, radical left, etc. So that's your three wings: the radicals, the populists, and the establishment. Okay, so the establishment is giving us status quo, corporate rule. Everyone all across the world hates the establishment because over the last 50 years, we've done what they call neoliberal economics. And what that means is, ironically, conservative economics. It's a very poorly named thing. And what it says is give everything to the rich and the powerful, and eventually they'll trickle all over you.
Reaganomics. Yeah,
Reaganomics, supply side economics, Laffer curve. These are all the same thing. Give everything to the rich, and maybe 100 years later, they'll give you a nickel or a dime, right?
Yeah.
It's such an obvious fraudulent economic theory. It's never worked. It's just an obvious robbery. But again, mainstream media in America is like, no, it's very legitimate. No, in fact, it's probably more likely to be true. I bet if we give another tax cut to the rich, I bet, you know what? Maybe they'll trickle on you. Oh, wow, thank you. I can't wait for your trickle, okay? So, by the way, there's a great economic theory called middle out. And really smart folks like Nick Hanauer push for it. And middle out just says, hey, instead of giving to the rich, why don't we give to the middle class? And the middle class spends more. So then that creates a positive cycle in the economy. The more they spend, the bigger the businesses get. So that actually lifts all boats, and it goes to the average American. That's populism, right? So populism is for the average guy, establishment is for the super rich and powerful. And of course, the super rich and powerful have won in this country for a long time. That's why the establishment's been in charge for a long time. That's why when an anti-establishment figure like Trump comes along and gives the middle finger to the establishment, he wins. He won on that alone. That's his number one go-to card. And by the way, people in New York and DC, in Democratic Party and mainstream media, they have no idea that that's why he won. They're so unbelievably clueless. They're like, oh, he won because he's a racist and sexist.
The deplorables came out.
Yeah. Oh, the country's so racist, that's why he won. Yeah. Then how come Barack Obama won twice? How come Barack Obama had an 83% approval rating, right? Hiding behind racism and sexism, not that it doesn't exist, of course it exists, right? But how big a factor is it in political and electoral cases? Well, we know Obama won twice. His name was Barack Hussein Obama. Nobody was unclear that he was black. He even had a Muslim middle name. He's not Muslim, but he had a Muslim middle name, and he still won easily both times. So it's just an excuse. So that's your three wings. The radicals are unacceptable. The establishment is the worst. And so you have to go populist.